Council assembles and grants that we may, as in your presence, treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner to promote your honor and glory and to advance the interest you have committed to our change, all which we ask in the name and for the sake of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Oath.
I, Keanu Kernan, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to law. I also affirm that I will serve the people of Montserrat to the best of my ability as a member of the Youth Parliament of Montserrat.
Solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to law. I also affirm that I will serve the people of Montserrat to the best of my ability as a member of the Youth Parliament of Montserrat. Let's go to the priorities.
Do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
Parliament Speaker of the House, the Honorable Ms. Shani Pike, and myself, I would like to begin by thanking everyone involved within as well as throughout the process of our attendance and participation at the 11th Commonwealth Youth Parliament Forum held in the beautiful Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That is good. That is good. There we go. And surely he deserves the honor, the praise and recognition for allowing me to embark on this journey, this experience, this trip, for watching over me thus far, and for continuing to watch over, guide, and lead me as I travel forward. Thanks be to God. To the Honorable Speaker of the House, Ms. Charlena White, Ms. Siobhan White, and their department for their extremely hard work, immense involvement, useful advice, and notable dedication within this venture. A personal thank you. Thank you to my fellow honorable members of the Montserrat National Youth Parliament for their nominations leading and granting aid towards my assistance and attendance, at this remarkable four-day forum. To the Commonwealth Youth Parliament Division, regional and international representatives, the Government of Trinidad and Tobago, Hyatt Regency, in addition to all the other various assisting bodies and the officials, a hearty thank you for hosting and making this truly an incredible experience. Much appreciation to my parents, loved ones, and anyone who I may not have made particular mention towards. Thank you as well. Last but certainly not least, to the many other people and organizations who have anything to do with and provided any words of encouragement, in addition to assistance within this very venture. Thank you. With brief regards towards my experience, I am sure the Honorable Height can also attest to the fact that this was a very, very remarkable and exciting experience overall. Personally, I found this was more so of a learning, familiarity, and development-based experience, if I do say so myself. There were indeed some personal nerve-pinching experiences within the debating process, and in particular, but surely, with some self-confidence, determination, and practice, there shall most certainly be improvement. I also find that identifying your weaknesses, having some levels of self-realization, and some reworking, restructuring, and readjustments, they can surely allow and aid in said improvement. During the few days of the event as scheduled, there was a structured schedule of events laid out, from caucusing to House debate sittings, from networking opportunities to parliamentary engagements, from tourist-like activities to partying and dining, from interacting in person to multiple daily social media messages. However, I'm not complaining. This experience from traveling to the sense of safety, security, and reassurance, the actual forum itself, comprising of group and official focus meetings, the debate sitting, accommodation, hospitality, excursions, etc. All of these major areas mostly went well. During many occasions throughout, curiosity-based questions were conveyed and cultural differences, explanations, as well as self-realizations were exchanged as well. Many of the international and even regional representatives and officials were eager to know and further learn about Montserrat, especially to note the overall life, relatively small size, small population, tranquility, safety, security, volcanic history, and mainly what makes this gem of the Caribbean stand out from its generally portrayed secrecy. We were indeed delighted to provide the necessary responses and even elaborate on some of the other key factors about this truly beautiful island we call home. In exchange, We would have experienced and indulged in cultural traditions, food, dance, music, art forms, and artifacts of Trinidad. And this was very much one of the highlights for myself and surely all the other participants. Officiators and representatives, dare me to say, even some of Trinidad's very own were excited. After the impact of the pandemic on travel and tourism, even on access, it was a tremendous joy for me to travel after what it feels like to be such a long time. I would have had the brief chance to have short visits, overnights, and stopovers in 4 Caribbean territories within the 7 total days of this trip, namely Antigua, Tobago, Trinidad, and Barbados. Finally, I must yet again say I truly appreciated the opportunity and was honored not just to represent myself, the Youth Parliament, but being chosen to represent you, the people of Montserrat on a whole. Thank you very much.
Motions.
I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier and Minister of Agriculture, Lands, Housing and the Environment, St. Luc Leblanc.
Madam Speaker, I rise to introduce and move a motion for the first reading of the bill shortly entitled the Elections Amendment Voting Age Bill 2022.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the introduction and first reading of the bill shortly entitled the Elections Amendment Voting Age Bill 2022.
Honorable members, we have a motion before you that has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Elections Amendment Voting Age Bill 2022 be read a first time. All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. The ayes have it. I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, let me first congratulate Honorable Kernon and you, Madam Speaker, on the participation in the 11th Commonwealth Youth Parliament debate in Trinidad, as well as your presentation on the topic 4 working days and remote working in the islands of Kari and Chikunya. I must say, Madam Speaker, that you both did an excellent job in representing Montserrat. This means that the democracy of the Commonwealth communities are in safe hands. Madam Speaker, I would like to appeal to the youth on island to join the Youth Parliament, as it can open doors for you. To the parents and teachers, allow your children and students to be part of the Youth Parliament. It can take them places, can help them grow, and contribute to long-term sustainable development within Montserrat, Madam Speaker. With that being said, I rise to give my contribution to the amendment of Section 12 of the Electoral Act, because, Madam Speaker, we believe that lowering the voting age from 18 to 16 will change the dynamics of elections in this country. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to lay out a few reasons why this amendment is so important. Reason number 1, we need to make voting a habit. Lowering the voting age can lead to a long-term increase in voter turnout, Madam Speaker, bringing more citizens in touch with the government and pushing the government to better serve its people. Research has shown voting is habitual, Madam Speaker. A person who votes in the first election is more likely to vote in subsequent elections, Madam Speaker, while someone who is not willing to will take several years to pick up that habit. People under the age of 18.
Honorable Deputy Premier, a moment of your time, please. I now take this time to remind members in the gallery to please silence their devices or turn them off. Thank you.
People under 18 tend to have a stronger root to their community, Madam Speaker, often having lived in the same area for many years and established the connection in the schools, family, friends, and community groups. This gives them an awareness and appreciation for local issues, Madam Speaker. Not like those persons, Madam Speaker, who comes down every time it's time to vote, Madam Speaker. This is different. It is clear that the age of 16 is a better time to establish a new habit. Data from some places, Madam Speaker, has shown that lowering the voting age, Madam Speaker, has indeed shown a higher rate than first-time voters, Madam Speaker. Countries like Argentina, Australia, Madam Speaker, Brazil, Nicaragua, Madam Speaker, Malta, Cuba, Scotland, and Wales, Madam Speaker. Why can't we move into that new era, Madam Speaker? Number two, arguments against lowering the voting age can be used, to disenfranchise adults also. In democracy, Madam Speaker, universal suffrage is the right of all citizens, and the ability to vote should not be taken lightly or arbitrarily, Madam Speaker. If a group is to be disenfranchised, Madam Speaker, the burden of proof must lie within those who want to remove the voting rights, rather than requiring the oppressed, Madam Speaker, which are the 16 and 17-year-olds, Madam Speaker, to prove why they deserve a right to vote. Throughout history, Madam Speaker, arguments against increasing the franchise have always been dubious, and today it still is. No matter the group, Madam Speaker, if you think young people are too naive or uneducated to vote, then ask yourself, how would you feel about receiving a test before you could vote, Madam Speaker? No matter the test, Madam Speaker, some adults will still fail. There are also adults who lack the maturity or who could easily be manipulated. The argument that certain groups of people lack the knowledge and maturity to vote has been used increasingly against voting rights, Madam Speaker, to persons who do not own land, to servants, and to women, Madam Speaker. That's throughout history. Now, are we repeating history, Madam Speaker? Number three, Madam Speaker, 16 and 17-year-olds are ready to vote. Research has shown 16 and 17-year-olds have the necessary civic knowledge, skills, cognitive ability to vote responsibly. A study comparing the qualities associated with voting, such as civic knowledge, political skills, and political interest among citizens 18 and older and citizens below 18 found no significant difference, Madam Speaker, between 16-year-olds and those above the age of 18. Furthermore, deciding how to vote relies on a cold cognition. The decision-making process, Madam Speaker, in which a person deliberates alone, unhurried, and draws a logical reasoning, Madam Speaker, ability. That cold cognition, Madam Speaker, matures at age 16. And as you grow older, it does not improve, Madam Speaker. Look at the people on the opposition side, Madam Speaker. Absolutely none of them are 18. and above, well, probably Minister Honorable Cannon, you should be 18 by now, right? But none of the others are 18 and above, Madam Speaker. Nevertheless, you will hear how eloquent the song, Madam Speaker. You will hear how matured the song. And you will understand why the need for the voting age to be amended, Madam Speaker. Reason number 4, 16 and 17-year-olds have a stake in the game, and elected officials must treat them as equal constituents. Persons under the age of 18 are directly affected by a range of political concerns, Madam Speaker. Education, criminal justice, government spending, and the environment, Madam Speaker, just to name a few. 16 and 17-year-olds have a right to vote on national issues that affects them, Madam Speaker. Furthermore, voting is the most reliable way for ordinary citizens to influence their government. Lowering the voting age, Madam Speaker, will force politicians to listen to 17, 16, and 18-year-olds and address their concern. Madam Speaker, this amendment seeks to strengthen our civic education, and lower voting age would maturely reinforce each other to increase civic engagement. Lowering the voting age, Madam Speaker, would improve education by allowing students to directly apply what they have learned, Madam Speaker, in the classroom in their communities, Madam Speaker. Because of the immediate impact that on students' lives, it would encourage schools and other learning institutions to implement higher quality education programs, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have had meetings, Madam Speaker, and I have heard members on the opposition side and members on our side also speak about the education sector, Madam Speaker, on the island, primarily MSS and community college, Madam Speaker, and what they would change and what they would fix, Madam Speaker, within their respective schools, and irrespective of what they would say to that, Madam Speaker. Irrespective of what they're going to say to that, Madam Speaker, the MSS and community college would be in a better place if this amendment is passed tonight, Madam Speaker. Every person running for public office will be on the A game because the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds will be looking at every action under a microscope. And we will indeed have fewer young people living and migrating right after secondary school, Madam Speaker. I want the people of Montserrat to know, Madam Speaker, with the exception, Madam Speaker, of myself, the Premier, Honorable Hertzman, Madam Speaker, and yourself, everybody, Madam Speaker, within this youth parliament, Madam Speaker, is below the age of 18. And this amendment benefits them, Madam Speaker. This is why, Madam Speaker, we are on that side, because we look out for the best interests of the people, of the young people, and the nation, Madam Speaker. And you know what's mind-boggling, Madam Speaker? It is alleged that policymakers in the history of Montserrat, Madam Speaker, have had relations, Madam Speaker, with persons between the age of 16, 18, 17, 18, Madam Speaker. Yes, 16 is the age of consent. But how can you have relations, Madam Speaker, with an individual between the age of 16 and 18, but those individuals cannot put you in or out of office, Madam Speaker? And in the voice of Dominica's musical artist, Madam Speaker, Suki Burnbraden, I mean, come on, who does that? Who does that, Madam Speaker? Montserrat's population, Madam Speaker, 18 and above, as at September 2018, information gathered from the Statistics Department was 3,529 persons, Madam Speaker, and that was a head count. However, Madam Speaker, the population of 18 and above was estimated to be in 2020 3,667 persons, Madam Speaker. 2021, 3,510 persons. 2022, 3,350 persons, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, you see the downfall, you see the decrease, Madam Speaker, in the amount of persons 18 and above who is in Montserrat today, Madam Speaker. Does this mean that the democracy of Montserrat is soon dead? And this is what this bill is trying to change, Madam Speaker. At this rate, Madam Speaker, based on the trend, God forbid, 10, 15, or 20 years from now, there will be no one, Madam Speaker, to hold up the nation's liberal democracy, Madam Speaker. And for these reasons, I know this government, Madam Speaker, is rallying 100%, Madam Speaker, about 300% behind the amendment, as it will do nothing but benefit Montserrat, Madam Speaker, benefits its democracy, Madam Speaker, and benefits its economy, Madam Speaker. With that being said, Madam Speaker, thank you for your time, Madam Speaker.
The floor is now open to debate. I recognize the Honorable Herdsman.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the bill election amendment. Madam Speaker, Olivia Rodrigo, a musician, once said, "Making your voice heard, even if you are like me and not of voting age, is important today and every day." I think we all can agree to the quote, "We don't look back and deny the voting age being 18. If it was set to 16, who will regret it? The world is on the road to equality and age-based discrimination. I think this should not exist in our current times, since we are trying to make progress. Madam Speaker, I remember when the national elections were coming up in 2019. While I was a student at the Montserrat Secondary School, I was eager and anticipated the long-awaited election results and what conceivable impact this could have on me. I wanted to participate in the elections, but I never had a chance to because of my age. I had no say in who would be in charge of my future and this country. I'm aware, Madam Speaker, of the effort to make, I'm aware, Madam Speaker, for the effort to bring ideas. On this point, I believe, Madam Speaker, that the opposition party may agree with me that if you are 16, you are still considered a minor. Yet, our parents and society trust us, and we agree that 16 is old enough for you to be able to drive a car. We are viewed as minors, but Madam Speaker, this is the time when we should be maturing and preparing to leave Montserrat Secondary School and begin working or attend tertiary school. My question for the opposition side is, how can parents send their children down the street by the grocery store but cannot vote for someone who will be running the country they live in? Secondly, Madam Speaker, we had 3,858 registered voters and a 62.52% voter turnout in the last election, which is not bad in my opinion. I'd like to emphasize that lowering the voter age can result in a long-term increase in voter turnout. Yes, yes, please. Okay, thanks. Researchers have found in Australia, where the voting franchise is extended to 16-year-olds, that the age group shows the second highest interest in voting in the capacity of voters under the age of 30. You know the saying, every dollar counts? Well, best believe it, same thing goes for election, every vote counts. Looking at the opposition side, I can see that some of them have not yet reached the age of 18, as my colleague would have said. The opportunity to vote on local problems that concern them, if voting age was lowered, local leaders would be compelled to pay attention to young people and respond to their concerns. Moreover, political issues affect them just as much as anyone else. Young people have a stake in the country that they live in. Allow them to vote at 16 as government decisions heavily impact them. Furthermore, they are mature and cognizant enough, and in addition to that, it will increase the voter turnout. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Greenaway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. John Lewis once said, and I quote, "Your vote is precious. It is the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in the democracy, and we must use it." End quote. Madam Speaker, my fellow colleagues, guests, and listeners across the web, a pleasant good evening. Permit me to restate the topic. The voting age should be lowered from 18 to 16. Firstly, I would like to define the following word, voting, using various dictionary sources, starting with the Cambridge Dictionary, which states, and I quote, "It is the activity of choosing someone or something in an election." In the Collins definition, it states that it is the action or process of indicating choice, opinion, or will on a question, such as choosing a candidate by or as if by some recognized means, such as ballot. And the dictionary.com, which states that voting is to express or signify will or choice in a matter, as by casting a vote, a ballot, end quote. From the definitions, the act of voting is not defined by age, which means the society of the country decides the acceptable age which they believe, and in our jurisdiction, is 18. But I beg to differ. 16-year-olds are just as knowledgeable as an 18-year-old and older individuals about civics, which means we can make responsible voting choices just as older voters. Madam Speaker, we all would have a reasonable decision as to why we think that the person elected is the right fit, which is no different from an adult. Look at it in this way. If an adult with knowledge about politics knows the weaknesses and eligibility of the individual running in politics, but yet still votes for that individual based on friendship, family relations, or just what was promised to them that they will get once that person is elected, why should we not take a chance on a 16-year-old who they quote, and I quote, is too young. Clearly, that adult is not looking out for the betterment of the country. They are just looking out for themselves. If voting is done on this basis, there is nothing scientific about the age. One can vote in selecting someone for office. Additionally, lowering the voting age to 16 increases voter turnout and develops long-term voting habits. Madam Speaker, with more people voting, there would be a better chance of selecting a more stable government that can stand for consecutive terms, building knowledge and resilience to withstand anything that is affecting our country and make it better. The National Youth Rights Association of the United States, and I quote, states that people are less likely to move as a result of attending college or leaving their families. They stated, people under the age of 18 have stronger roots in their community, often living in the same area for many years and establish connections to their school, family and friends, and other community groups. This gives an awareness and appreciation of local issues, as we are less likely to live away from home. We do not deal with unclear residency laws or absent ballots that can discourage college students or new voters. Because of the habitual voting nature, encouraging new voters at a young age will increase the voter turnout. Young people who vote also influence the voter turnout of their parents, end quote. Madam Speaker, we constantly sing the same tune about wanting to hear from the youths. If this tune is true, at the age of 16, these young adults should have a voice through their vote selecting policymakers who create laws that affect their lives. After all, we are the future generation. We will be taking over the country very soon, and the changes made in the country now not only affects you, but it affects us too. We are the youth, and we are willing to make our country better. To conclude, I believe that age should not define you, especially in the generation where young adults are becoming more aware. Even to pandemic babies are showing us that age doesn't define them by being able to do certain things that we wouldn't think they would do at a certain age. Therefore, the time is ripe to lower the voting age from 18 to 16. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honorable pair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, distinguished judges, my fellow youth parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant good evening. Madam Speaker, I stand before you in full support of the moot. The voting age should be lowered from 18 to 16. We live in a democratic society which, as described by the Parliamentary Education Office of Australia, is a society that works towards the ideal of democracy, respecting individuals and their right to make their own choices. When elections were first held in Montserrat in the 20th century, Madam Speaker, only 114 of the 7,119 residents of the islands were eligible to vote, stifling the voice of 98% of the population. Today, although our voices are much larger, it would be remiss of us to not acknowledge the voices of our youth, especially those at the 16 years of age. Madam Speaker, The age of consent on island is 16. At 16 years of age, it is expected that a young person is mature enough to make decisions concerning their body. However, Madam Speaker, the irony exists that as a young person at 16, you are not able to take full control of your body as you are not granted the right to elect the persons who make other serious decisions that will no doubt affect the same body that you have consent over. Decisions such as abortion and other family planning policies. Persons under the age of 16 are active and contributing members of the Montserrat society. A 16-year-old is subjected to pay tax on honest dollar they make. However, the same 16-year-old is not allowed to vote for a government who is responsible for deciding on fiscal matters of the country, which ultimately have a direct effect on how every dollar of his money is spent, including the taxes which are spent investing in education, basic infrastructure, and health care. Madam Speaker, young people are expected to follow the law but have no say in making it. People under 18 are expected to follow adult laws and experience adult consequences. If we don't do so, this means that not only does our society expect young people to know right from wrong and the consequences from breaking certain laws, but our society also expects that we are able to navigate the adult legal system and are mature enough to be placed in prisons. It is hypocritical to tell us that we are mature, responsible adults when they commit a crime, but ignorant and naive when we want to vote. This year, I turned 18. I still become overwhelmed at the thought that I am finally legal to vote. Although for the past 2 years, I have been saddled with adult responsibilities, I am now finally able to have the power to make key decisions on the quality of life I want for myself, my family, and my community. Voting is my chance to stand for the issues I care about, like affordable housing, economic justice, environmental protection, and quality education. Allowing us to vote today at 16 guarantees that many of the issues we as young people face today will not have to face tomorrow. When the voting age has been lowered to 16, young people have shown our interest in voting. In 2013, the Tamaka Park, Maryland, USA lowered its voting age to 16. Registered voters under 18 had a turnout rate 4 times higher than voters over 18. Madam Speaker, lowering the right to vote from 18 to 16 will have a special significance in our culture. We already have an aging society and one that has been stagnant for years, with emphasis on what the greater part of the voting population needs or cares for, although we are looking for the future. Young people have a right to be heard and to have our interests taken seriously. However, by disenfranchising young people, society tells us that we do not have anything of value to add to the political conversations in our society. It also gives politicians permissions to ignore our interests as young people under 18 and have no way to hold their representatives accountable. Madam Speaker, it is time for our young voices to be heard. It is time for us to be the change we want to see in the future. It is time for 16-year-olds to vote for the life they want and not inherit the life of others. I thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Opposition Member Cassie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to oppose the bill, shortly entitled Elections Amendment Voting Age, stating that the voting age in Montserrat should be lowered to 16 years of age from the pre-existing age of 18. Madam Speaker, follow along as my team and I show you the many different perspectives towards this topic. Madam Speaker, I am sure that you may find what the Minister of Agriculture and his fellow colleagues on the government side had to say was well put together and thought out, that even I myself might have been convinced. However, Madam Speaker, do not let the intonation and vocabulary fool you. It is not as simple as it may seem. My opposition team, Madam Speaker, will help me prove that as we further break down the topic into different categories, such as age appropriation, psychological preparedness of 16-year-olds to vote. We'll also present statistical and election data to provide food for thought for our listening audience. Finally, my team will look at other countries that have wandered down this pathway. Madam Speaker, the government side had stated a mouthful about what 16-year-olds today are capable of. But answer me this, Madam Speaker. How is it that this same legislation does not qualify 16-year-olds to drive or even own a liquor license, but we are now saying that they can choose the very people that govern the island? Madam Speaker, how is it that we trust these same 16-year-olds with such a heavy task, but the basic fundamentals of life we ponder in their hands? Furthermore, Madam Speaker, how many 16-year-olds today in Montserrat do you really think are well in tune with politics and policies? Madam Speaker, how does it look for a whole age range of voters to be voting for a party where they have no idea what it is that they fundamentally stand for? Next thing you know, they're voting a Montserrat Putin. Fun and jokes aside, exercising one's voting franchise is serious business and should not be seen as voting just for voting's sake. On the government side, they just took an idea and ran with it. But did they do extensive research? I think not. Our research, Madam Speaker, has shown that of the 11 countries that have altered the voting age, most of them have not seen many positive outcomes. Contrary to what the Minister of Agriculture has stated, even developed countries like Austria are not happy with the performance of their young voters. I won't stress this point too much. Madam Speaker, one of my intelligent colleagues on this side of the House will deal with the matter for me. Madam Speaker, in the long haul, this proposed legislation change would not be substantial for Montserrat. Madam Speaker, let us take it back to the 19th century when voting was only for men and did not include women. This had not changed until 1918, but there were many other qualifications that played a part in them being able to vote, such as being of the age of 30. It was not until 1928 where women of 21 years of age were given the opportunity to vote freely, which increased the number of persons eligible to vote. Madam Speaker, in 1959, Britain reduced the age qualification from 21 to 18 years. Madam Speaker, as you can see, vital and relevant changes to legislation are needed at times. Society evolves with time, and it is our jobs as Member of Parliament to advocate responsible changes, well thought out and well-researched changes. Madam Speaker, with this voting age and the change that comes along with it, is Montserrat ready for it? And what change would it bring to the island? I would like to end by sharing with government members words from old wise folks that I was once told. I know all change, a good change. Madam Speaker, I will finish here and let my fellow colleagues on the opposition side
further shake up the government's points.
I recognize the Honorable Member West.
Madam Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to this debate. Along with my fellow opposition members, I cannot support this bill as proposed, as it conflicts with the development of our youth in their milestone years. 16-year-olds are at a crucial point in their life as they plan their future. These young people should be focusing on their SBAs and exams and will not have time to follow political discourse in any great detail. Although it is important for all of us to be in tune to what is happening around us, it is both unnecessary and unfair to expect 16-year-olds to keep up with political machinations, especially at a time when an excessive amount of information is being pumped out. By the way, Honorable Deputy Premier, tell me, are 16-year-olds expected to balance out the bad electoral choices of adults? If the adults always suffer from buyer's remorse and regret their selections—
Member West, would you like to be given way?
Madam Speaker, I seek permission to answer the question that the member poses to me.
Member West, would you like to give way for the government to respond?
No, thank you. If adults always suffer from buyer's remorse and regret their selections, that will not be fixed by 16 and 17-year-olds. The only solution is a better caliber of candidates. Madam Speaker, I was 16 years old last year and cannot begin to express the immense pressure I was under. Imagine if it was an election year and I was also having to follow the political circus and decide who was most worthy of my vote. I do not believe in change for the sake of change. There must be a reason. What disadvantage is being caused by 16-year-olds not being able to vote? I contend there is no material disadvantage. Instead of reducing the voting age, we should promote healthy communication within households. This will allow for children to express their concerns and allow their parent or guardian to vote with their interests in mind. Just because a child does not enter into the voting booth, it does not mean they are not being represented. Let us focus on quality over quantity. Simply adding a couple hundred 16 and 17-year-olds to the electoral list would not on its own enhance the democratic process. Additionally, in Montserrat, as the Election Act stands, it states that an individual must be 18 years of age to vote, and the Constitution states you must be of the age of 21 to be an elected politician. So, if it is that we are to pass this bill, are we now saying that a 19-year-old has a right to an elected position? Are we proposing to entrust these young individuals with such power? Yes, it is a fact that young people are full of bright ideas and a drive never seen before. However, let us not get ahead of ourselves. Let us allow young people to develop into well-rounded citizens, enjoy their youth, and educate themselves before throwing them into this unforgiving arena of politics. Imagine an impressionable 19-year-old in a position of power who can be susceptible to manipulation by those around them who are much older. This effectively minimizes the voice of this 19-year-old, making their position, unfortunately, a wasted one. To close, I also wish to bring to the House's attention the discrepancies across the Constitution. Instead of focusing on a non-pressing matter, such as 16-year-olds voting, we should be more concerned with laws surrounding the age of consent,
which we can all agree is actively affecting young people in Montserrat. I do not wish to take away from the matter at hand, so at this time, I will not elaborate. But I do wish that the next time we meet, this will be at the top of the agenda. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, fellow youth parliamentarians, esteemed guests, and persons looking online, good evening. Madam Speaker, responsibility is a progression that occurs with age, while there are general responsibilities that are ageless. For instance, keeping your surrounding clean. Other responsibilities, such as taking care of the family, comes at a later stage in life. Within the current socioeconomic culture of Montserrat, Madam Speaker, there is an increasing need to allow for the youth to have a voice in the future pathway our country is to venture on. As highlighted in the Generation Unlimited, the well-being of young people in Montserrat fact sheet by the government of Montserrat and UNICEF, as Montserrat begins planning for a post-pandemic recovery, it is important that the government seizes on the opportunity to build back better by creating a sustainable, resilient, and inclusive society. The youths, which are between the ages of 13 to 25 years old, are a significant portion of the Montserrat population and should be given a voice in the country's important decision-making process. Now, our opposition members accused us of not having any facts. Now, according to a report from the Statistics Department of Montserrat from the 2011 Population and Housing Census data, there were around 935 young people ages 10 to 24 in Montserrat, that is in 2011. Young people accounted for about 20% of the population. This proportion is likely to decrease in the future, as we have seen from the Minister of Agriculture's data, and to decrease in the future as the population continues to age and fertility remains constant or declines. Youth are the future of our country, which is an even more significant reason to offer them a seat at the table. One such means of offering the youth a place at the table would be to lower the voting age from 18 years to 16 or 17 years. The points for considering this move are as follows. Number one, and as aforementioned, youths are stakeholders of this country. Within the context of Montserrat, a considerable section of the population are youths, most of which have impressive ideas, as mentioned before, and concepts that are outside of the normal thought process of adults. They can therefore bring a sense of creativity and innovation to how policies are designed and implemented, especially those geared towards them. In numerous cases globally, it is the youth that offer the greatest change within a society. Montserrat has been more or less stagnated for the last 20 years and is presently at risk of falling behind not only the rest of the Eastern Caribbean member states, but the rest of the Caribbean region and ultimately the world. Montserrat therefore needs innovation in order to grow and develop. One way of achieving this is to give more voice to the youths. After all, the future belongs to them. As stakeholders, Madam Speaker, they will also have invested interest in how Montserrat develops, what they want to see in the future, what opportunities will be present after they graduate MSS. Madam Speaker, for elected officials to look towards further growth and prosperity of Montserrat, they must look towards the youth by seeing them as equal constituents within the voting process, as well as the individuals who will maintain and develop Montserrat on all socio-economic fronts. Madam Speaker, lowering the voting age to 16 years will also encourage youth to develop civic responsibilities. As was mentioned by a member of the opposition, they stated that youth have, 16-year-olds don't have any civic knowledge. Well, sorry. Well, it has been a long-standing issue regionally about the low participation of youth, of young adults, in the entire electoral system. Most seem uninterested about their civic duties of participating in the various government elections, as they do not think their voices are heard or that their votes can be a turning point to an election outcome. Madam Speaker, even if you are aware of the struggle, even you are aware of the struggle it was to obtain sufficient youths to join and meaningfully contribute to the Montserrat National Youth Parliament. Madam Speaker, flashing back to 2019, an article on the Montserrat National Youth Parliament budget speech and debate stated that the aim of the Montserrat Youth Parliament is primarily to expose young people to the tenets of democracy and of the Westminster parliamentary system, to teach them the workings of the legislative branch of the government and prepare them for a possible future in government. It serves also, among other things, to give the youth a platform to voice their views and concerns on critical issues affecting their lives, with the assurance that government and concerned organizations would be alerted of the challenges they face and take appropriate measures to address the situation. Madam Speaker, this basis of the Youth Parliament remains the same, but to a stronger extent. Madam Speaker, lastly, the youth do not feel that their interests are being represented, as without trying to offend anyone. Most candidates are oftentimes very matured adults. Young adults will oftentimes feel disconnected from these kinds of candidates. However, should they be given the opportunity to actively partake not only in the voting procedure, but also the possibility of campaigning, the participation of the youth would significantly increase. Madam Speaker, looking at Montserrat's special circumstances in terms of sheer population, the country has not been particularly successful at significantly increasing the population. This circumstance has also helped to reduce the growth and development of Montserrat, making the country not interesting to remain, and hence, Montserrat suffers from continuous exodus of the youth, as we can clearly see. However, if it can be seen that they have a voice and can actively participate in the shaping of their country, Montserrat will therefore have the potential for sustained growth and development. Madam Speaker, some last points before I conclude. So once again, our members of opposition stated that we do not have any facts, that we did not do our research. But Madam Speaker, constitutional law expert Michael Mortley stated in an article by PBS NewsHour USA, the nation had been embroiled in the Vietnam War for years, and the sentiment that began to emerge was that if young men and women were old enough to fight in the US military, they were old enough to vote. In 1971, Congress proposed the 26th Amendment, and it was ratified by 3/4 of the states in a matter of months, the fastest ratification of an amendment to date. Finally, according to Brandon Klugman, campaign coordinator at Vote 16 USA, an organization which lobbies for lowering the voting age. Currently, 4 other cities have laws allowing 16 or 17-year-olds to vote. 3 Maryland cities, Tacoma Park, Greenbelt, and Hyattsville, allow 16-year-olds to vote in local elections, and Verlick, California, allows 16-year-olds to vote in school elections only. Finally, young people have the right to express their opinions on matters that affect them and the right to be heard, a quote by the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 12.1 and 13.1. And Madam Speaker, fellow government parliamentarians and opposition members, let me just give you a quote before I officially end. Have our opposition members ever heard the phrase, "The right way is not always the popular and easy way"? Standing for right when it is unpopular is a true test of moral character, by Margaret Chase Smith. Thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Member Dessouche.
Good evening, Madam Speaker, fellow members of the government and the opposition members. This evening I'll be discussing my opinion on why the legal voting age should be lowered from 18 to 16. Since my fellow government members have already explained exceptional points, I would like to go back just to one point that was stated. If the legal age of consensual sexual activities is 16, then why shouldn't the legal age of voting be the same age, Madam Speaker? The only legal thing a person can do at the age of 16 is have consensual sex. And as we all know, a few teenage sexual interactions lead to teenage pregnancy, Madam Speaker. So if they can legally conduct inactivities that can create a child or even cause them to raise a child, why can't they legally vote? Raising a child takes a lot out of a person at any age, and they would need a lot of resources to accommodate for them, Madam Speaker. Now, I'm not saying that I support teenage pregnancy. Personally, I don't want children until I'm in my retirement ages. But as the leader of the opposition, Ms. Cassie, said, why are we saying that 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote when they are not even allowed to drive? I agree. But if it is legal for someone, if it is legal for someone at the age of 16 to have a child, then they should be able to have other rights too, like driving, opening their own bank account, paying their own bills, and most especially the right to vote. But let's try to work little by little to give rights to the youth of our country. Voting is a right of the people of that said country to choose who it is they want to lead their country. So why shouldn't 16-year-olds who are considered adults in this country and are old enough to create a child and have a job be allowed to vote, Madam Speaker? As my fellow government member asked, are the youth not considered the people as well? Well, as the opposition might argue by saying the youth do not understand much about Parliament or any politics at all, Madam Speaker, this is an easy fix. Voting can be and needs to be taught to the young people at early ages, and so that when they become old enough to vote, they wouldn't be so confused but passionate about choosing their future leaders of this country, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Opposition Member Cassie.
Madam Speaker, I rise to oppose the amendment made to the election voting age bill presented by the government side, which alters the voting age from 18 to 16. Madam Speaker, let us examine the mind of a 16-year-old and their psychological preparedness to vote critically. Let it be known to the government we have facts too. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, though the brain may complete its growth in size, it does not finish developing and maturing until the mid to late 20s. You hear that, Madam Speaker? Mid to late 20s. Let me continue to give the government side a clearer understanding. The front part of the brain, called the prefrontal cortex, is one of the last brain regions to mature. This area is responsible for skills like planning, prioritizing, and controlling impulses. Because these skills are still developing, teens are more likely to engage in risky behaviors without considering the potential results of their decisions. Madam Speaker, most laws, young people are recognized as adults at age 18, but science suggests that most people don't reach full brain maturity until age 25. Don't you think we are pushing it at 16 with this significantly underdeveloped brain? Members of the government side may ask what brain maturity or mental state of mind has to do with voting. And I would say to them, to those daunting persons, you should go and read our nation's constitution and legislation. Madam Speaker, Section 12, Part B of the Election Act, Cap 1.04, states that persons must be of sound mind to be eligible to vote. I would add to this by saying we should consider mature-minded voters as well. Madam Speaker, don't get it twisted. We must value the input and thoughts of the youth. But why rush the rain before they are ready and educated? I don't know about this honorable house, but I know 16-year-olds. Madam Speaker, I go to school with them, and I will be the one to tell you that 16-year-olds are not focused on the legislations and policies that govern this island. I'm sorry. We have other focuses in our lives, like CXC examinations and what prom dress I'm wearing. These are the important things that are stressing us out. Madam Speaker, very few 16-year-olds I know listen to the news and political affairs, much less have knowledge and awareness on the social, economic, and political functions of this country. Has anyone taken the time to consider how a new demographic of 16 to 17-year-olds without sufficient political knowledge could massively influence an election? Well, let me paint a picture based on an analysis. Madam Speaker, in the last general election, which was held in Montserrat on the 18th of November 2019 for the 9 seated seats in the Legislative Assembly, it was observed by myself and the opposition team that if 100 16 to 17-year-olds voted in one direction, the course of the election could shift dramatically, to the point that 2 members of the government could have lost their seats and a different government would have emerged victorious. Madam Speaker, that type of power should not be unchecked, especially with undeveloped young minds. I would like to ask the members of this honorable house, has anyone on the government side thought about the fact that a 16-year-old is still a child? Madam Speaker, page 10 of the Montserrat Child Protection Act states that a child is defined as a person who is under the age of 18. The Child Protection Act is there to protect young kids and states those under the age of 18 are children. But yet still, these same young people, well in need of adult protection, is being asked to vote. Your children are supposed to be enjoying their childhood before they're being thrown into the trenches of the real world. Being asked to have definite thoughts and opinions on the politics within Montserrat that some adults can't even manage themselves? What type of stress are we putting on them? Does it now mean that we should consider a 16-year-old an adult? Does this mean you can marry at 16? Doesn't it now mean we have to review the legislations and make further amendments to adapt to the 16-year-old adults? These 16-year-old children we now considering adults. Madam Speaker, for a 16-year-old to be able to vote, that is an adult-like responsibility. So therefore, an adult-like responsibility needs to be recognized and accounted for across all legislation. If you review other laws, such as an act, would be reckless on the part of us as elected members. It could have negative ripple effects throughout our society, which could include, but not limited to, endangerment of our country's minors. Madam Speaker, I hope you see the responsibility we are putting on 16-year-olds. Does this government want to be remembered as the government that strips 16-year-olds of their childhood and plunged them to the grueling adult world filled with burdens and countless responsibilities? Madam Speaker, it is my will to inform the government that this bill is like opening Pandora's box and requires further re-examination. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to express my stance on the age criterion for the Election Act to be amended. I rise to wholeheartedly support this amendment. Simply complaining about their problems and discussing their opinions with friends and anyone else who cares to listen to their opinion, in my opinion, 16 and 17-year-olds should be allowed to express their opinions. For the future actions of the elected party will affect them just as much as not having a say violates their rights. And if they do start voting at that age, they most likely continue to do so throughout their lives. Most 16 and 17-year-olds satisfy every criteria in the Principal Act except for the age criterion. The arguments made most frequently to support the age criterion is the fact that they don't know much about and are too young to understand the elements that are related to government affairs, so their vote will most likely go to their parents or won't matter. However, their alleged ignorance is not an applicable argument because knowledge and experience are not a criteria for voting eligibility, and if it was, this argument could be used to disenfranchise opposite adults from voting too. And even if die-hard supporters say that brains of teenagers aren't fully developed, the same can be said for most 20-year-olds and for those in their mid-40s to 50s whose brain function is starting to deteriorate. So according to Honorable Cassie, they shouldn't vote either. Moreover, whenever they say at this age, we are under too much pressure, let me ask those listening, does life suddenly transform into a lavish and a glamorous episode of The Kardashian? Do all problems go away as soon as the clock ticks 12 on your 18th birthday? Exactly. No. Life is a carousel that keeps going faster and faster and doesn't stop unless the ride ends. Age is not a reliable unit to use for the measurement of intelligence. There are so many adults who are completely ignorant. They know nothing, zero, nil about Montserrat politics. I think there is too much negativity towards young people, and everyone assumes they're all immature and have not reached the age where they are knowledgeable enough to make an informed vote. I wouldn't agree with this, and I think that there are many intelligent 16-year-olds and that are more than capable of making good political decisions. Most youths in the school system have lived in Montserrat for many years and have established connections to their school, family, friends, church, and other community groups who give them awareness and appreciation for local issues. Many teenagers have nuanced and valid opinions concerning the nation's political and economic activities that should be represented. Their votes will obviously be influenced by their parents, because other than their own personal knowledge and limited experience, their parents and other close elders whose experience are the other points of reference and information they can confidently rely on to guide them. However, during adolescent years, when the wants and needs of parents and their child often diverge, they should be able to represent themselves. And if you are concerned that information is not provided to these teens, and if you are also concerned that it would be biased, it could be organized that children would actively learn about civics in school and have access to every party's campaign so that they could have the necessary civic knowledge, skills, and cognitive ability to vote responsibly. Yes, they may be minors, but 17-year-olds can operate a car, which is one of the leading causes of preventable injury-related deaths in the world, own a bank account, and at the age of 16 and older, you are able to have a full-time job, to give consent, and to pay taxes. More importantly, you are able to bear a child at any age. Yet, they can't be and are not trusted to vote for their own representatives. This is a human rights issue. It's taxation without representation, a slogan that has been in use for centuries for many similar causes to describe the discriminatory injustice of being forced by the government to pay tax without having a say in the actions of the government. This is wrong, for it is inconsistent with the right to be free from discrimination on basis of age. For these tax-paying citizens are being excluded from this democratic process. If the purpose of taxation is to fund and support the needs of the nation, how will the government know what 16 and 17-year-olds truly need without the information to know their direct, unfiltered opinion? Voting is a right. It's a choice, and 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds should have that right to make a choice that affects their future in this country. The government of Montserrat has long been concerned with young citizens' engagement in politics and ways to foster greater political participation amongst them and the development of the nation, and potentially having young people stay in Montserrat after they leave secondary school or college. I believe that allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote will make them feel included, so they are more likely to be inclined to participate in political activities. And as members of the government have rightfully said, when political involvement have become a constant and a habitual practice in lives of everyone in the country, voting turnout will increase. Need I say more? You know I can talk for much longer and give more reasons to support my claim. But I think the honorable government members have done an amazing job. So allow me to conclude by saying, 16 and 17-year-olds deserve to be involved in this democratic decision-making process because those decisions will directly affect them. They should be able to vote for their representatives, and starting at a younger age will help voting be a habitual practice, which will eventually increase voting turnout overall. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Opposition Member Kernan.
They've done an amazing job. Madam Speaker, my fellow honorable colleagues have so far identified various flaws regarding this proposed bill, of which the government seems so eager and adamant to pass. Madam Speaker, I would like to further outline and highlight briefly some additional factors as it relates to this very bill in particular, and how these may surely affect or influence the feasibility, efficiency, and effectiveness of this legislation. You see, Madam Speaker, many nations of the world, notably Argentina, Austria, Brazil, Cuba, Ecuador, Malta, Nicaragua, Scotland, and Wales, in addition to the Isle of Man, Jersey, and Guernsey, 3 self-governing British Crown dependencies have indeed reduced their minimum required voting age to 16 years. However, Madam Speaker, the very vast majority of these aforementioned territories have still projected low voter turnouts within that very age category. What the government has failed to realize is that with the already minute population of roughly 5,000 and the corresponding voting age bracket, even perhaps with such a minuscule increase in Montserrat's case, surely it can be anticipated that there would be an almost unnoticeable dent, minimal fluctuational increase as far as the voter turnout would go. This has been evident in some of these more developed and populated nations, much less of a territory of such small scale. Another very important factor to take into consideration, Madam Speaker, is that within the process of updating the voters list, in addition to the numerous other areas that would have to be altered to accommodate the new bracket of eligible voters, they will, without a doubt, pose to be considerably costly, especially pertinent to taxpayers. In the case of an already strenuous budget, it is almost unlikely that we would be able to cope. This has also been evident within some said nations who have already attempted to fully execute this practice, as they have evidently and most certainly recognized their minimal positive impacts, and on the contrary, many negatives as well. This can be justified in that the primary expected outcome of elevating and boosting voter count numbers was ineffective and even further not achieved holistically. My opposition leader noted oppose. This bill is a no-go, full stop. This is supposed to be a debate. This is Parliament. You're supposed to have broad backs. Come on, government. You're supposed to be able to take some licks. Come on, fix up yourself. They say that they're for the people. The government members keep making constant reference to the age of consent. Perhaps raise it then. That should surely be another debate for another time. Able to bear a child at any age? I open my eyes wide, come on. Deputy Speaker Herdsman, children typically don't get influenced to go to a grocery store down the street to pick up groceries. However, they surely can get influenced by their parents to vote for a particular member within government. Try it. And you're right, every dollar counts. With your already burning budget, surely every dollar counts. Yet the government can surely pay for this drastic change? You're right. This government is a joke. Nothing in life is perfect. You need to realize that. The government claims that their side is the correct side with them in it. Of course they are. Perhaps the government just wants to lower the voting age to get more votes from the 16 and 17-year-olds. Perhaps they feel that their chances will be much greater in winning seats in the next election. But this can work in one of two ways, in and out of your favor. Perhaps they are scared that this government train may get derailed by the mighty opposition. Watch the clock, watch it. The passionate government needs to understand that it's not just about coming and taking up our time to present a rap bill. As the local singer Sipiki says in one of his hit songs, Pay Off, they crazy, if I may use that word, they're going out their mind. Trust me, they are. There is clearly no need to adjust, alter, or change the minimal voting age. They need to outline the flaws, however, fully recognize them and work on establishing suitable solutions, and take all of these factors into deep consideration before coming to present such a bill. Until then, I suggest they go back to the drawing board. Madam Speaker, permit me to be seated.
I recognize the Honorable Opposition Member Rasul.
A pleasant good evening, everyone. Hope we all had a wonderful day. Madam Speaker, today's bill entitled Elections Amendment Voting Age Act 2022 presents the objective of the government to lower the base voting age to 16. This poses many flaws, and as a result, the opposition has agreed that this is inapplicable. You see, Madam Speaker, it is crucial that any changes take into account the needs of the modern society. In order to guarantee that everything is completed correctly, a process must be followed. Establishing a suitable committee and engaging stakeholders are necessary. The ability of women to vote was one change that is beneficial to humanity and went through a correct process. Madam Speaker, I would like to point out that here in Montserrat, the right for women to vote has led to powerful women taking part in our country's growth. Women such as Miss Margaret Dyer Howe and Mrs. Hector Dorset, just to name a few, have stamped their mark on this country's political landscape. Had it not been for the landmark legislative change in 1959, these women of Montserrat would not have made such a positive impact. We expect legislation to change to be formidable. Madam Speaker, not a rush bill to alter the voting age with no real substance behind it. Women's movement stood for the modernization of our society. It has had beneficial impact on the globe. The world will continue to function more innovatively in the future. The quest for innovation should come with long-term positive expectations in mind. All in all, Madam Speaker, I'll conclude by saying that bill amendments must follow the right procedures if they are to have a futuristic impact and influence on the civil society needs. Thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, Patrice Roberts once said in one of her songs, "Drink water and mind my business." But, Madam Speaker, the opposition, only the opposition has time to sit back, drink water, and do nothing. Madam Speaker, nothing to improve this country's economy and nothing to improve development, Madam Speaker. We need to stop the business, Madam Speaker, of opposing for opposing's sake. Let us find loopholes within the bill and work on it as a government, Madam Speaker. And, Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition, she agreed with the bill, but because it's the opposition, she disagreed. She said it, Madam Speaker, she said it. To a question, Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition asked in relation to if 16-year-olds are knowledgeable enough to vote, Madam Speaker. I want to tell her, look at the man in the mirror, Madam Speaker. Look at Honorable West, Madam Speaker. Look at Honorable Kernan, Madam Speaker. And look at herself, Madam Speaker, when she reached 16. Madam Speaker, Honorable West, I know as a young female, Madam Speaker, she spent enormous amount of time on social media. You are aware of the latest trends and fashion. Why not get abreast, Madam Speaker, with geopolitical issues that affects you as a youth, Madam Speaker? The youth of today are not the youth of the past, Madam Speaker. Information are available, Madam Speaker, and easily accessible. I know each and every one of you are more capable to vote, Madam Speaker. At age 16, Madam Speaker, I was already working. I finished college at early 16. I was working, paying tax, paying social security, Madam Speaker, and basically running my family, Madam Speaker. Why couldn't I vote? And that was a major concern for me, Madam Speaker. They forgot to mention, Madam Speaker, electoral process was or is, Madam Speaker, a course that students ought to take at MSS in 5th and 4th form, Madam Speaker. This will help each and every one of them, Madam Speaker, get the knowledge they need, Madam Speaker, because they so desire knowledge, they don't have enough knowledge, they're not matured enough, Madam Speaker. This will help them, Madam Speaker. Members on the other side, Madam Speaker, said, they look tired. They look restless. But I understand, Madam Speaker, because there's no rest for those in the opposition. Madam Speaker, let me educate the leader of the opposition. After all, her core cognition has not yet developed because she's still, how much, 13, 14? Voila. But, Madam Speaker, a report given by Real Instituto Elcano in Austria stated the voter turnout of 16, and 17-year-old, Madam Speaker, in Austria, was 63% in the general election, Madam Speaker, on an average of 80% of the people who voted, Madam Speaker. 63%. And you stand there and tell us that in Austria it is extremely low. I am disappointed, Madam Speaker, in Honorable Kernan. See, I had high hopes for this young man, Madam Speaker. It's like we need him on our side to help him, Madam Speaker. I was proud of you, comrade. I was proud of you. But it seems like I am wrong because you're on the wrong side. Madam Speaker, as I said, let us look at ways to block the loopholes within this act, within this amendment, and not just trash it out, Madam Speaker. Because as I said, this amendment benefits us. This amendment benefits the youth of Montserrat, Madam Speaker. This amendment will take this country to a place it has never been before, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Member Detouche. No, Bazi, sorry. I recognize the Honorable Member Bazi.
Madam Speaker, members of the opposition,
The second reading of the bill. I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, I rise to read the second. I rise to move before the Honorable House, Madam Speaker, the second reading of the bill shortly entitled the Election Amendment Voting Age Bill 2022.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the reading of the bill entitled Elections Amendment Voting Age Bill 2022.
Honorable Premier, I think that you're supposed to second the motion for the second reading of the bill.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the second reading of the bill entitled Elections Amendments Voting Age Bill 2022.
A motion has been raised and seconded for the second reading of the Elections Amendments Voting Age Bill 2022. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Election Amendment Voting Age Bill 2022.
The House will now go into committee stage.
This act may be cited as the Elections Amendment Voting Age Act 2022.
Any amendments to Clause 1? Clerk, may you please repeat Clause 1?
This act may be cited as the Elections Amendment Voting Age Act 2022. In this act, Principal Act means the Elections Act, Cap 1.04. Section 12 of the Principal Act is amended by deleting S.121A and the following is substituted. A has attained the age of 16 years. Third reading.
Here.
My apologies, House. Clause 1 now stands a part of the bill.
An act to amend the Elections Act, Cap 1.04. Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of National Youth Parliament of Montserrat and the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Elections Amendment Voting Age Act 2022. Principal Act means the Elections Act, Cap 1.04. Section 12 of the Principal Act is amended by deleting S.121A and the following is substituted, has attained the age of 16 years.
I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report that the bill passed through the committee stage with no amendments. I now move a motion for the third reading of the final reading of the bill entitled Election Amendment Voting Age Bill 2022.
There is a motion before you for the third reading of the bill entitled Elections Amendment Voting Age Bill. All those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. And now will be a third reading. Now will be a reading. The bill will now be read a third time, sorry.
An act to amend the Elections Act, Cap 1.04. Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of National Youth Parliament of Montserrat and the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Elections Amendment Voting Age Act 2022. Principal Act means the Elections Act, Cap 1.04. Section 12 of the Principal Act is amended by deleting S.121A and the following is substituted. Has attained the age of 16 years. Adjournment.
I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I rise to move the motion for the adjournment of this Honorable House.
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion for the adjournment of this Honorable House.
Members, the question is now before you that this Honorable House is now adjourned. All those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. This court has now, sorry. This Honorable House has now been adjourned.